Hello everybody, welcome back. Today I am super excited to bring you this adorable lizard, and yes, I said adorable because I think iguanas are absolutely adorable. This is Iggy the Iguana from the Phillips Park Zoo, and this is going to be our subject today for our animal draw along here at Aurora Public Art. So make sure your pencils are sharpened, your paper is ready, you got your eraser out, and we are going to have a good time in this very hot summer days drawing this awesome lizard who loves the heat, Mr. Iggy the Iguana. Let's go.
So start with the head, circle. And we always start with the head because it is a good way to measure our proportions throughout our animal or figure. So you're going to start your head a smallish circle in the upper right-hand corner of your page. Make sure your page is horizontal. And then we're gonna sort of do a quick little muzzle drawing here. A little diagonal line coming down and coming out. And unlike our other mammals where our front of the muzzle sort of comes in and the nose is further out, if you see Iggy here has sort of, it's more of an underbite, right? Their muzzles or their snouts sort of come out and the line sort of goes like this. And their faces are very boxy, is how I've heard it described. So it's gonna go a little more like that. Keep that even more sort of an angle this way. And then we're gonna use this measurement to get our rest of our body in here. So let's do a little measurement. So here's his head, approximately down to here, past this little round shape here, which is called this whole thing is the jowl. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 heads, including his own head long. So we're gonna do a little bit of a neck here. Don't forget, we never wanna forget their necks. Kind of have a it's fairly longish neck, but for our measuring purposes, 1, 2, 3, 4. So about down to here again, we take our measurement of our head, and this is our proportions. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mark it right down about here. This is where the end of that body is. So we're gonna do a nice long oval shape, and their bodies are pretty heavy and weighted. You can see again his body is at an angle here. So we're gonna do a nice, and we're just gonna do a big heavy oval shape to map in that body, and make sure you keep that at an angle, just like that. So we got a little bit of a neck, an oval shape down to here. Now, iguanas have really, really long tails. And you see in my original photo here, you know, his whole tail, you can't even get it in the regular photo. It kind of ends probably around here. Their tails are at least 2, sometimes 3 times as long as their bodies. They use them for defense. They whip them around. Some predator wants to come up and snatch them up for a snack. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come up, I'm gonna map out this body, and we're gonna sort of mark his tail coming down. And then for fun, we're gonna do a little something different that we've done in the past. We've usually just replicated our drawings exactly the way they are, the photographs. But today we're gonna have a little fun, and we're gonna cheat and use our anatomy knowledge, and we're gonna try to get that whole tail in there. So we're gonna mark out this tail. So I'm just gonna cut a nice curved line down and around. I've been doing some studying of iguana anatomy, so I thought it'd be fun. This is sort of what you do sometimes as an illustrator. You use several pictures of research or sources, and sometimes you need to combine them because you won't find exactly what you want or need in your piece. So once you get that down, And you're going to come back down around underneath here. And we're going to come, so we got this line, come down around. We're just going to kind of map out the bottom part of this body here. Get that neck in there. Get that all in. Great. So let's come back around here and let's map in those legs. So, you know, he's got his front leg and his hind leg, and then these large feet with these long toes, they're called, these digits. It's a nice general term I like to use. So right under his shoulder, you're gonna mark here, as his shoulder's kind of up in here, and then this is gonna come out, and again, you know how I like to equate things with the human anatomy. So this is his top of his arm coming out, and this is what would be equivalent to our elbow. But of course on him, they're both legs. Just gonna kind of align diagonal coming out, not too far. And then this line is gonna come down. And you can see here where the hand kind of ends. It's like at the middle of his head, right around there. So this is the base, or is technically his foot. So I'm gonna do a little marking here for his hand. And then we're gonna mark out these digits. So there's a little one there and a long one kind of coming out. And again, they're gonna come out almost just underneath where his head is. Line there and a line there. And that's sort of a guesstimate. And this leg is really coming out at us. So that's why it's sort of when we draw this line is gonna be shorter than this one's gonna be a little longer. It's called foreshortening when an object kind of comes right out at you like that. So that's a little technical term we like to say is foreshortening, because you're I guess it's the shortening of the limb, because it's the perspective is that it's shooting out at you. Then let's mark out this back leg. Again, this is right where his hips are. This is going to come down here where his knee is. And they have really long bodies, so you're going to want to leave at least one head width in between these two limbs approximately. And then this line is going to come down underneath here. Going to mark out that bottom leg. And you can see this back foot here. You can see this back foot here is sort of right underneath him, right underneath his body there. So that's going to go there. And then again, his toes, and those are kind of curving out around that log, right? So this is going to go one line, two line, another line there, another line there. Nice and long too. Mine aren't as long as they probably should be. And then he's got another digit coming up there. So they have similar digits to us, 5 on each foot and or hand and or claw. Great, so once you have that mapped down, this is kind of our basic structure, right? So we're gonna come in here and start fleshing out some of our fun little details. So we're gonna come in and we've already marked out this and his neck. So let's get in the rest of this body in here. So you're gonna come around. Let's keep working on those limbs. I'm gonna draw a curved line up and around for that elbow, and you can do like a little bump. And then this is gonna come down and around here. You see we got that. And then here's a little foreshortening trick. We have this front part of his leg is almost coming out in front. So you're gonna do a curved line around like this, a little overlapping it's called. So curved line like this, and then this leg is just gonna come a line like that. Right? And then let's map out this back one. Or we've mapped it out, let's flush it out. Again, a curved line around here. And then this is sort of his knee. Not sort of, it is. And this is gonna come here. And then again, we have that same overlapping that's happening with that front part of his leg. This is gonna curve around, then come down, just like that. As you see, we got that front and the back there. And then we can go ahead and erase some of this inside part here because we don't need that. We've flushed it out. And then we can come back in here, excuse me. And let's actually, you know, we can go ahead and erase this part too because we don't really need this, right? We got that all mapped out. And again, like always, I like to work from the general to the specific. Now let's go in and sort of mark out this tail here. So this is the back, this is his tailbone. But the tail is actually gonna come around and it's gonna curve around and you're gonna come down around here. And this is just a really general line that I drew just to kind of map it out. But like I said, the iguana, they have long tails. So this tail is gonna be at least, I mean, I'm just guesstimating because I just want it all on the, but if you can see that, this is the length of his body. So this tail that I've drawn out is at least 2.5 widths of his body, which seems fairly accurate. If you look at this photo, right, there's his body, 1, 2, right? And we're not even at the base of his tail. So then we're gonna come back around and his tail is kind of coming up. You can see that strong muscle there coming. And then it's gonna curve around. And then here, we want these two lines to actually come to a point. You give it a little curve here. So this line is gonna actually come up to a point like that. Get nice and skinny at the end. And then you can erase all these marking lines here. Get all that in there. Right? And then you have that all mapped out. So let's go back in here. There's a lot going on here with Mr. Iggy as far as the rest of his anatomy and markings and scales and patterning and everything going on. So let's break it down, make it a little more simple for us. First, let's get in some of these facial features, right? So the eye is pretty close to the top of the head. And their eyes are actually more of, again, like that football shape. So we're gonna draw actually what is probably more like his eyeball, and then we're gonna do some eyelids around it. A curved line here, and a curved line underneath. I apologize if you guys can hear that scratching. That's my dog apparently digging a hole in the floor downstairs. So yeah, so you're gonna do sort of a curve because this is sort of he's a profile, and then this is the curved line, this is curved line out. And then we can get his pupil in here. Now they have a lot of wrinkles around their eye. You can see this is another picture of Iggy that I actually got from the zoo, and you can see all these wrinkles around there. So we don't want to forget those wrinkles around his eyes. There you go. And then let's map out his eyelid here. And so we have this pupil and then the iris. You can definitely see the iris with these guys too. Definitely see the good portion of their iris with their eyes here. Again, you can see this right here, right? You can see there's the white part of the eye, then the iris, then the pupil, which in that photo is a little more oval shaped. When I had zoomed this one in and looked at it, it was a little more rounded, but that's something again that, you know, as you're doing your drawing, you can really kind of play with that look, right? And how you want it. Now, like I said, their mouths got sort of an underbite. So this mouth is gonna come, and it's gonna come at a curve. He looks like he's kind of smiling, right? He's a happy iguana, living his best life there in the sun lamp, having a good time. So that curved line is going to come all the way underneath. You see that? It comes all the way underneath his eye. Very long mouth. And then this line is going to kind of curve out. And it's going to do a little curve underneath. And that has that lizardy face, the way that underbite is. Slope like this, curved line up, and then this is a little perspective here, and this gives it that more three-dimensional look when you take that line and curve it around underneath its mouth. And then you're gonna come down and sort of do a diagonal there and curve that line out. And then they have these like tiny little nostrils out front. He's looking pretty adorable for a lizard, right? So then their head, it actually kind of curves right around his eyeball, and then they have this other kind of bump that comes up on top. I've heard that they've had what's referred to as a third eye, which is they can kind of sense light and heat up there. It's not technically a third eye. Well, that's kind of the basics of that. Now, iguanas have this huge crest all along their back, very distinct. So I find the best and the most simple way to mark this is it kind of comes up, it's low, a little diagonal, and then instead of worrying about all the little zigzags right now, you just mark that shape with a light line. So it's sort of, it's a little short at first, and then it kind of comes up, right? You guys see that? And then it's really tall over his body, and then as it gets to his tail, it starts coming down and gets more narrow. And here's a cool little trick that's going to give you that 3D shape or that perspective, is you're going to take that line, because what's going to happen is that crest is going to kind of come down and around, and that's going to kind of give it, and that's just marking where that is on your tail, right? Because we're playing around with this a little bit. We are playing around with this, making it a little more illustrative so we can get that whole tail in there. So then you have that crest mapped out. We're going to come back in here, and again, I like to work from general to specific, so we're not going to go in and do all that yet. We're going to come in and get some of this other parts of him done. We're going to come in and get this whole shape done, because this is all, it's not looking very iguana-y, because they have these very distinct, like a ball-like shape, part of his jowl. There's another technical term for this. Begins with an S. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But the purpose of these are basically to make them look bigger. So if a predator comes up, you can puff himself up, or another male, be like, dude, I am the king. I am the king of the iguanas. And so we're going to mark that part out, and then we're going to kind of mark this little beard type scaling, and then his, what is called his dewlap. His dewlap is kind of stuck down here. So you just have to do a curved line under, and then it kind of comes down under there, underneath his chin there, and we have his hand in there. So we've marked out those shapes. Now let's come back here. Let's finish off these feet. So again, we're gonna do our lines around here. Curve those lines around. I would do the lines on top first, because again, our perspective, right? And then this one you can kind of see the whole thing. This one is a little bent up, coming down. And then this little short guy coming out here. And they have these really, like I said, these really long digits. And then they've got these cool claws coming off of them. Definitely want to get some of that in there. Similar to our talons that we did with our eagle. And then this one is a little tucked in behind the other one. Let's erase some of that. Because there we go, there we can see the overlapping a little bit better about how his dewlap kind of comes down behind that. Then let's come back here and do this other foot. So this is gonna come down around, and this little digit's kind of sticking out at the top there. And then like I said, these are sort of very spread. Get a little more spread out as they come around. And this one is actually, I just kind of mapped that one out quick. You can just see how it kind of almost comes down. Very long. Helping them to climb. Get all the leafy goodness that they like to eat. All that good stuff. In the hot, hot climates. This isn't a green iguana, and their natural habitat is more in like South America, but they're considered an invasive species. So you'll actually find them down south in like Florida, because people who have them for pets will just release them and they get into the wild. So they can survive down there, but they're not natural. So it's called an invasive species. Kind of hoarded in on the natural habitat. So there we got his sort of back leg in there. So let's come around and start to work out some of these details in here, right? So for this part, so we have this ball, but it's actually a part of a bigger substance. So you can kind of come in and around like this. And then it has this kind of diamond shape on the inside, right? And then you can do some, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but you map out some of those scales in there. Because this part is a little tricky, and you're gonna kind of want this line a little less pronounced than this one over there. So it'll kind of look like it's coming out from him, from his body. And then all up and down they have these like, it's gonna have these like bumps. I heard they're called brain bumps. And I think they're more typical on the males. I'm not sure if they're on females, but I think I read that they're mostly on males. So that's kind of just in the front neck part. Kind of have these bumps. And then he's got this wrinkly skin. So we're gonna come in here and do a couple wrinkle lines. They have super, super thick skin made of keratin, I also read, and that protects them from the heat of the sun. So you're gonna kind of do a couple lines in here to give that wrinkly wrinkly look. So you kind of come, make straight line, and then curve it around, right, like that. And that's going to give you that sort of wrinkly look. And this is a good thing to know if you ever are drawing clothing. This is the same thing you would do to draw wrinkles in like clothes, right? So now we're going to come back, and I'm just going to give him a little ground plane because he's just sort of floating here. I'll just do a little diagonal here so he doesn't look like he's floating as much. Maybe a little line back here so he kind of looks like he's climbing up on some sort of rock. So he's coming along a little bit, and we still have some details to do. So let's go in now and pattern out this crest. And so what you can do now that you have this down, we got these, you can do your sort of triangle shapes. And what I like to do, what I figured out that worked the best for me, is sort of a series of just diagonal lines. And you see how they kind of go back and forth. So that'll give it that more natural look. If you do these lines here, and you can continue that all the way throughout. I'm not going to do the whole thing for time's sake, because I don't think you guys want to sit in here and watch me draw a bunch of lines. But then here we go. This is how we're going to do this. And this is going to come down and continue into like a little pointed shape, right? And then there's not much down here. It's very slight, but this is what gives it, makes him look like he's sort of turning in space. That tail is sort of turning. And you see how that gives that illusion? Pretty cool, right? So that kind of shows the top of that tail coming around. So then after you do these lines, you can come back and finish them off with those triangles. And they come all the way almost down to the bottom, and then you can erase this top here. But yeah, then you can map out this whole cool crest, because this is an important detail for these guys. And it's one of those details that can be a little overwhelming, right? You're like, how do I do that? But when you mark it out like this and then put in the details later, and then you can kind of erase that top line there, that will give you the right shaping and the right spacing for that. So another thing we want to do, we should probably give him some of his wrinkles on his body too. You can do a couple little curved lines there. He's got all this scaling, and then another important marking that green iguanas have. They have this striped tail, right? The striped tail goes all the way down. So we want to make sure to get that striped tail in there, and it starts right down up here around where his leg is. And here's a cool little 3D trick to do. Instead of doing our lines like this, that makes it really, let me draw a little darker. That kind of looks really flat, right? What you want to do is this gentle curved line, and that's going to show that tail sort of moving in space. Right? And then as it comes down around here, going to curve around like this, and you're just going to kind of keep echoing that curve around, and that's going to give you those stripes. And then you can go ahead and shade those, you know, use whatever shading technique you'd like. But yeah, they have these very distinct, and you don't have to, I wanted to show you the lines, but you can even just do that with shading. I'm just going to show you real quick here. You could even just, if you want it a little softer, you know, maybe you don't want that harsh line, and you can kind of do your shading like that. But they have these really distinct stripes on their tails, right? And here again, now we're going to come back in here. I feel like my eye is a little big, but he's so cute. So this is a little trick you can also do to kind of bump up the cuteness of any of your animals, because, you know, if being an illustrator, part of it is you illustrate or add different characteristics to those animals. You can kind of, if you make eyes a little bit bigger, that gives it that kind of wide-eyed cute look. So let's make sure and give him some zigzags down here. This part underneath, we can't forget that. And then we have some scaling and shading to do. So I'm gonna keep kind of working on this. Give you guys a couple seconds to catch up. So again, we talked about a little bit about how to draw scales with our alligator a couple weeks ago. So the scales on them are quite different than the scales on this iguana, because they're big and you know, they have the ridges on the back, but you can use the same method of patterning or gridding for your scales. And again, my particular style, I don't always draw every single tiny scale or every bump. I just like to give a hint of them. So you can choose some spots, and you might even want to choose some spots where the shading is darker. Think about this, the light is coming down. So underneath it, you can see the picture. It's going to be a little darker under his tummy, right? And this is a great place you can kind of grid out those scales. So again, and you want to make sure and that scaling follows the body. Now I'm making these a little bit bigger, but again, I'm going to show you really big. So if I was going to do his tails on his tummy, a great way to do it is to just draw a grid, and then you can kind of do little circles in there, and that's going to give you that look, you know. And you can even do a little bit down here. You can do that. You can do the grid, or you can just map it out. And again, here too, what's cool to see on this tail is how the scales sort of fade out. So you can even use that a part of your shading, right? A part of your scales. You can kind of start out here and have those scales kind of come down. Sorry, it's kind of hard to see there. But yeah, but that's the basics of our iguana. You can do some scaling up here. They kind of have these lips that come around. And then again, do your scaling up there. But here, and then, you know, push and pull. And voila. So here you see I shaded in my spots, and I did a lot more shading in here. And again, do you see how I made this line really nice and dark here? Because this is kind of protruding out, and then a little bit lighter in here. And then a lot of wrinkles around the nose. And yeah, and if you want to go in there and then give it some light and shadow, I'd really darken up down here, down under the belly. And you see though how this line comes down and around, and then you can barely see it on top. But there you go. There is Iggy, the adorable adorable. I don't know if lizards can be adorable, but if they can be adorable, this is an adorable lizard.
So there we go, you guys. Iggy the Iguana. Isn't he adorable? He is, for a lizard, he's a pretty good looking guy, I think. So anyway, this is the chance for you to go in and make this piece your own. You can add some shading, add some color, cool background, palm tree, you know, where does Iggy live? Bring your own voice to it, as much detail or as little detail as you want to do. Some people love to get into all the little tiny details. Other people like to have a more general view. So you can take this foundation and really make it blossom and make it into your own piece. And I want to see that work, so make sure to post it in the comments. Again, thank you to Aurora Public Art for hosting me. Thank you to Phillips Park Zoo for letting us draw your beautiful animals. And thanks to you guys for tuning in and enjoying the animals in this really new and unique way that we've been doing here. So as always, I just wish you well, and I hope for you to stay safe, stay healthy, and as the weather gets hotter and hotter and we're finding ourselves inside in the air conditioning, remember to always stay creative. Take care.